Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today we are talking about your research essay, and for 9th grade you're not actually doing an essay, you're doing something else, but both of these for 9 and 10 are a research-based assignment. So the notes in general, we're talking about how to more effectively conduct your searches using the databases, because that's kind of one of the first places you're going to start, and especially trying to utilize primary sources as much as possible. So as we go through this, I'll kind of walk you through kind of what each of your grades is doing, and then the notes for everything else are pretty much the same, okay? So on this first, let me make myself smaller here. For 9th grade, you're finished with Hamilton now. So our main task is that you guys are going to be kind of doing a research assignment, but yours is a song. So you guys are going to be creating a song based on research, kind of, a la Hamilton style. So the very first thing you are going to do when we come back is kind of get with a group, and you and your group are going to choose either a person or an event or a specific document, something that's related to this, like founding of the United States, that founding era, okay? You're going to be researching background information on whatever that topic or that person or whatever that event is, and our main goal is going to be to use primary sources and some of those key documents that I'll share with you in class. And then sophomores, you already kind of know what you're doing. You are writing a formal research paper, okay? And you've got the questions that I've kind of already given you or talked about a little bit in class, but these are it. So, was the decision to drop the atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki a military necessity, meaning it couldn't have been avoided? If not, was it justifiable for a reason other than military necessity? Thinking about today, historians continue to debate this decision. Was there another way for us to end the war? If so, what was it? And then lastly, if you were President Truman in 1945, would you have dropped the bomb based on the research? So again, yours is research-based, but you are ultimately making an argument by the end based on that research you're conducting. All right. So this is looking at how do I find the source that I need. All right. So you're going to jot down notes on that blank page that you have on like the next slide after this with some of this information.
In this video, we will learn about search strategies that will help you level up your library research. You may be asking yourself why you need to change the way you communicate in order to research. Well, popular search engines use natural language searching, meaning the search engine can interpret your natural language. Library databases can't interpret language this way, so we have to adapt in order to find scholarly information. Using Boolean operators allows you to create more precise searches and communicate complex search strategies in a more sophisticated way. Most importantly, it helps you find what you need faster, which is always nice. Boolean logic is made up of 3 connecting words, or, and not. Use these to build your search equation. When you use the phrase or, you're telling the database you'll accept either or both of the words. This expands your search and is useful when one of your main concepts has synonyms. For example, college or university. You'll use this when either word is acceptable. When you use the word and, you're directing the database to return results that contain both words. This term narrows your search. For example, if I use education and online, I'm demanding that the database include both words. Use and when both concepts are vital to your research. Use not when you want the first concept only. This also narrows your search. It's helpful when you find a lot of results on a related concept that is not in your research scope. For example, I'm researching religion, but I'm not focused on Christianity. Be careful to not overuse this term because you can cut out potentially useful resources. Phrase searching is another useful technique that can be combined with Boolean. Using parentheses or quotations around a concept tells the database to search those exact words in that exact order. If, for example, I plug the Great Gatsby into a database, the database interprets my search as the and Great and Gatsby, or the or Great or Gatsby. This means the database may list every article or book with the word great in it. If you tell the database to search, quote, The Great Gatsby, it will return results with this exact title only. You can use either a question mark or an asterisk to create a truncated or wildcard search. Most often, an asterisk will work, but check the help section of a database or ask a librarian if you're unsure. Truncation lets you search for a word that has multiple endings. The asterisk replaces the ending of the word. For example, if I search compute asterisk, the database will search for computer, computations, computers, and so on. It simply keeps your searches shorter and limits typing. Wildcard searching is useful when multiple versions of words are acceptable. For example, searching WOM?N will return results referencing both women and woman. This tactic broadens results. So, now that you know what to use, let's talk about where to use it. These search strategies are useful in the library catalog, both the main search and advanced search. You can change the Boolean operator on the left, and you can also utilize the operators in a search bar to combine related concepts. Try using these search strategies in library databases like Academic Search Premier and JSTOR. If a database defaults to a simple search bar, look for an advanced search option. This link is often right underneath the search bar. Today we talked about the difference between natural language searching and database searching. We learned about 3 search tactics: Boolean, truncation, and wildcard, and we identified places to practice these techniques. If you want to brainstorm keywords, search techniques.
All right, so this next part is going to kind of walk you through what types of sources you should be looking for, whether you're doing a research paper, a research presentation, whatever. Academic sources are the ones that you're going to find in the databases. Those are going to be the ones that I definitely want you to use for these assignments in particular. It's not that, again, you can't use other sources, but the point here is that we're supposed to be teaching you how to identify what is a legitimate, good, quality, academic source and what is maybe not, all right? And we don't want you just willy-nilly going to search on Google for stuff, okay? So this first section here, so what types of sources do you need to use? Preferably, especially for the 10th graders, I would like for you guys to use at least one book. Databases, you definitely should use a variety. So it could be Inspire, it could be World Book, Encyclopedia. I showed you at least 10th graders the SIRS, the 2 different SIRS, ProQuest and the Knowledge Source in class. You definitely want to look for scholarly journals. You want to look for government archives. Freshmen, you guys are going to be looking at a lot of primary source, like original historical documents. So those are going to be really helpful if you look at like the Library of Congress, all those kinds of government websites. You can use different periodicals. You can use primary sources. Again, you're going to use a lot of those. 10th graders, the Hiroshima, that's technically a secondary source because the story is being told through somebody else, but that idea that those stories came from individual survivors of the bombs, that will be really an important one to consider. So what is a scholarly journal? That is also known as an academic journal or a scientific journal. It could be a peer-reviewed journal. All of them really should be peer-reviewed if they're a scholarly journal. That basically just means they are written by experts in a particular field of study. It's not written by, Billy Bob's uncle's cousin's blog that you found randomly on Google, okay? It's written by experts, people who actually have some credibility in that. Remember back to second and third quarter, we're talking about ethos, pathos, logos, all that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that you've got quality, reliable sources, all right? The audience of scholarly journals, those are, they're intended to be read by other experts in that field, meaning it's not going to be always written at a language level that might be appropriate for you, so just know that in advance. They're usually much more sophisticated in language. They are usually evaluated by an editorial board and other other experts before they're accepted for publication, and that's what we call that peer-reviewed journal. Okay, it's designed to ensure that the articles published are based on solid research that meets the normal standards of whatever that field of study is. So in our case, these are more based on historical events, so there's not necessarily a lot of protocol to follow per se, but we want to make sure that we are interpreting these original documents in the right historical context. And then the last part, references. That's what's missing down there. References, they should always be listing the references of where their information came from. Most often you're going to see it in probably APA format, so that's why we are continuing to talk about that. All right. A scholarly article is not periodicals like a popular magazine. It's not a news magazine. It's not a professional publication or just a trade journal. That's not the same thing as scholarly work. Okay, so a periodical is something that's regularly or periodically published in intervals. It might be bi-weekly, it might be monthly, quarterly, whatever. All right. So how do I evaluate a periodical? That's one of the main things that you guys should do. Look for the author. Are they an authority on that particular subject or discipline, profession, whatever? Some online databases such as ProQuest are going to link to that author's name. So you can go click on that and see what other articles or things that they've published that might be in that database. Always look at the title. They should have keywords. That can kind of give you a clue, of course, of what's in the article and whether or not it'll be useful. And then, of course, the publisher. So, who is the publisher? What type of publishing do they do? Are they a small press? Are they big, academic focused? Are they a trade publisher? What are they? That can kind of give you some background on, what is their motive as a publisher, too. You should look at the audience. So, who's the article and the publication intended for? The date of publication. So, the topic that you're writing about determines how old the information can be. All right. Freshmen, you guys are talking about stuff from the 1700s. Okay. So, of course, everything you're going to read is probably going to be old. Okay. Sophomores, you guys are looking at kind of the main historical event, of course, was from the 40s, but a lot of what you might research after that it could be more recent. So again, it's important to know how frequently that database is updated with current information. And then pagination is referring to literally the page that you see it on. Do they have an index? Do they have an appendice or a single appendix at the end or whatever? Do they have illustrations and bibliographies and all that stuff? Can you find additional information based on what they've provided to you? Okay. For the databases, so we already talked a little bit about this in class. These are an organized collection of information, an organized collection of data. Okay. They might have periodicals, they might have books, graphics, multimedia, all kinds of different stuff can be on there. Databases can be very general. So when most of you go to Inspire, the Indiana Inspire database, that can be pretty general, but you can narrow it down to be subject oriented. I want to just look at abstracts. I want to look at stuff that only has full text. I want to look at, whatever. You can narrow it down to just what you are looking for. All right. So this is an example of what it looks like. You might have over here on the side, here's all these filter by format buttons. So are you looking for a journal? Are you looking for a news article? Are you looking for a trade publication? Whatever. You can filter by the topics, the reading range. So if you're ooh, I've read a lot of stuff, I don't really understand the language, the reading range might help you filter out stuff that's maybe really way up here in Lexile level when maybe you need to be more down here. Okay. You can also filter by the database. So if you only want to look at stuff that's just a bibliography or something, you can filter it like that. Okay. The abstract, all of you should know this because this is in your APA notes. It's just a short paragraph. Okay. It explains the problem or the topic or whatever that the article is addressing. In your case, it's explaining, summarizing what your paper is about. It's also used to explain the method that you use to acquire that information sometimes. So if you are actually conducting your own research and your own data collection, where maybe I gave out surveys and stuff and I am explaining that information in my work paper presentation, whatever, you would also include that information in there as well. For us, at the end of your abstract, you're going to have a very brief little list of keywords. Okay. The other part, so when we're talking about evaluating for bias, for freshmen, this probably won't apply a ton to you, at least with this particular assignment, but for everybody. So we are talking about credibility when we talk about bias. So the quality of being trusted or believed. So bias is that inclination or your mental leaning for or against something. So sophomores, as you guys start to look up information about should we or should we not have dropped the bomb, those are going to have some bias to it because it's somebody's opinion, because it's a should question. That's an opinion. But your objective in your research and your delivery of, for freshmen, you're writing a song basically, but you still want to be objective. You still want to portray factual information. So think about what is included, what is excluded and left out. But you want to try to avoid things that are going to list exclusively just personal opinions and ideas. All right. So maybe you're at this point, you're like, I found some really good research. Now what do I do? Okay. You have to synthesize all that stuff together. How do I put all this together in a logical format? A, without plagiarizing, and B, without just sounding redundant or having one whole paragraph from this source and one whole paragraph from this source. And it sounds very much like that patchwork essay that I was talking about. So you need to start thinking about, like, what's your summary and conclusion. So start with a summary or the abstract if the article has one, and then jump to the conclusion. This will give you a better idea of what's in the material, and you won't have to waste all of your time reading the entire thing if it's not going to work for what you need. You need to take notes by hand. Yes. Okay. So as I mentioned, in terms of summarizing versus paraphrasing, your notes, your comments, all of your highlighting, underlining, whatever you want to do, that helps you as a researcher remember the information. Okay. This also forces you to keep track of the sources, to think about how each source relates to the next one, and most importantly, after our ChatGPT discussion, it keeps you from plagiarizing. Okay? So make sure that you are taking notes, preferably by hand, but even if you are typing them, it's a good idea to still work on that summarizing. Just do it in bullet points. All right? You also need to think about comparing and contrasting. So where are the similarities and differences between this source and what they're presenting, maybe about the same topic? How do they relate to each other? Are there big gaps in information? What's, again, included? What's left out? If you can find what's called an annotated bibliography, it should do all of this for you as you're looking at each source. All right? So how do I figure out which search terms I should actually use? This is like the biggest flaw that I see in many of you when you're trying to search. You type in, like, you copy paste your teacher's question, put it into Google, and then you get a billion answers, and then you got to search and sift through all of that. You should not have to do that, especially when it comes to using our databases. So this video is going to explain to you, like, how do I better and more appropriately select and use keywords when I'm searching to help me narrow down my research.
How do you get from a research question to a pile of useful articles? Magic! Wait, no, what am I saying? It's keywords. And FYI, we use the term keyword whether it's one word or three. Keywords are index terms. The word index comes from Latin, meaning pointer finger. Index terms point the way for a computer to retrieve a particular document from a database. 2 to 4 keywords are usually sufficient. This isn't a case of more is better. It's a case of the right amount is the right amount. Only use 1 keyword and you'll get way too many results. More than 4 keywords and you might not get any. 2 to 4 keywords will hopefully yield a few dozen to a few hundred results. That's a sweet spot. The quality of your keywords makes a difference too. The more unique and specific, the better. Keywords come from research questions, like this one. Are people who play video games at an increased risk of being violent? To get the answer, we need to squeeze our research question for some keywords that'll lead us to relevant empirical research. First, we take a look at the question and cross out anything that doesn't contain specific meaning. Are people who at an risk of being? Play is just the word we use to describe what someone is doing with a game, and there really aren't any other options like working a game, so that's gone. Increased here is tougher. It's getting at the relationship between video games and violence, but I'm going to cross it out too because I don't want to exclude any research that suggests video games might decrease violent behavior. I'm not trying to find an excuse to demonize video games. I'm trying to answer a question. I don't want to blame something just for the sake of blaming something. Okay, that leaves us with video games and violent. These are keepers because they refer to specific concepts and won't bias my search results. 2 good keywords can be enough, but it's good to be prepared just in case they're not. We've gotten all we can from the research question, so that means we gotta get creative. We take the keywords we found and blow them up, like this. Broader concepts go on top, narrower concepts go underneath. The original 2 keywords are probably still the best ones, but these others could be helpful. Thusly armed with keywords, you can choose a database and start searching. If you don't find anything right away, don't be discouraged. Our databases contain millions of articles, and we have dozens of databases. There are more articles in a single database than you could read if you lived 5 lifetimes, provided you've chosen a real academic topic and not something bizarre like the relationship between Beowulf and Batman. Then there's gonna be research out there. Oh wait, there's even an article about that. Huh. If you still aren't finding anything, it's probably because you're hunting for delicious penguins at the North Pole. You know, 'cause they don't live there. Anyway, try a few different databases before you start to worry. Also, you only really need to locate one good article. See, articles are written by, and I say this with love, hardcore professional nerds. They're gonna be thorough. Just flip to the end of that article you found and check the references. You'll find a comprehensive list of books and articles in your topic. You can then locate those articles in our databases or skim the text of the article for new keywords. Maybe you can find some terminology you haven't thought of yet. For example, a lot of the research about video games seems to use the word aggression instead of violence. So remember, identify the key concepts in your research question in order to produce keywords. Use 2 to 4 keywords at a time. Try the same searches in more than one database. And if you can find just one good article, treat it like a dumpster full of sandwiches and eat like a king for days. And if you want some help with this, stop by the reference desk or use the Ask a Librarian email service.
All right, so we've already talked about APA format. This part here should be just a review. You guys know you need to use the author's last name. You need to use the page number. The point of APA and the difference between... I totally misread that. MLA, at the top here. MLA uses the author's last name and page number and emphasizes the author's qualifications and points to specific sections of the text. That's typically how MLA works, which is why it's so much more important, like with an English class and you're reading a book, and yes, I need to know what page you found that on. It's a lot more specific to the author, all right? In APA, which is what you guys are using this quarter, you are using the author's last name and the year of the publication. That emphasizes the author's or single author, and then how recent the information or the research is. So the fact that many of you are going to use primary sources kind of negates that a little bit because we know they're going to be older. But the point here is that you can keep track of the information in a specific, consistent format. All right? So in terms of our standards, this is what you should be able to know. This is what you should be able to do. All right? When you leave here and go to, 10th or 11th grade next year, don't say, we never learned that in English. Yes, you did. So here we are. I can identify the central idea in a text. You should be able to read the thing, whatever you're going to read, and tell me what was this mostly about. What's the main idea? What do I take away from this? Okay? I can show the relationship between 2 or more central ideas. You should be able to look at multiple sources and explain how they are similar. Okay? I can analyze how the relationship between 2 or more central ideas provides a complex analysis of a text. All right? That's looking at how can I look at like this topic in this case and look at multiple sources and central ideas and point out where there are similarities. I can identify the order in which points are made and developed. So can you follow the organization of whatever the structure is of what you're reading? I can analyze the connections made between a series of ideas or events. So again, you guys are talking about historical time period. So knowing the chronology of things will definitely be important here. I can write a thesis statement. So this is moving into the writing part here. I can write a thesis statement that organizes my writing and draws connections between my ideas. Sophomores, you guys will have to have a clear thesis because you're writing a formal paper. Freshmen, even though you're doing a song, I'm still going to ask you before you start, what is the thesis? What are you trying to prove or say in the research-based song you're going to write? I can develop my topic by using different types of credible evidence as support. You have to have multiple sources for both of these, no matter which grade you're in. I can effectively use transitions, whether it's in a song or whether it's in a paper as a topic sentence. We have to transition. I can write a conclusion that supports my thesis statement. So your song, freshmen, should come to a logical close just like a conclusion paragraph in a paper. I can use an objective tone to express my ideas. That one's really important, okay? Everything you guys are doing is based on research and evidence, okay? So freshmen, yours should not really have a lot of subjectivity to it. Sophomores, the only part that is going to be subjective to you is where you guys are explicitly presenting to me what you think is the answer to the question of should we or should we not have dropped the atomic bombs. All right. The last part is looking more specifically at research. So I can formulate a research question and narrow it as my research evolves. So using those search terms will be important. I can synthesize information from multiple sources. We've talked about that. I can evaluate the credibility of sources. Okay? We're not going to Wikipedia. I repeat, you are not using Wikipedia. That's not a source you can use for anything in this class ever. Okay? I can use reference materials appropriately. That one just means, can you incorporate them? Can you sift through them? Can you figure out what is relevant and what's not? I can avoid plagiarism and over-reliance on any one source. All right? This one is extremely important. We had our ChatGPT conversation. All right? If you don't know how to write something in your own words, either quote it or ask for help. Because if it's found to be plagiarism, meaning you put something in your paper, you did not credit where it came from, and you tried to pass it off as your own, that is plagiarism. Okay? And the last part, I can cite evidence appropriately to acknowledge others' ideas. So whether we're doing the song, whether you're doing a formal paper, you have to know how to cite, and that's where we go back to all of our APA stuff. All right? So the final question here for you to answer at the end of the video is to explain what are 3 things that you think are most important from this that you need to take away, that you either need to work on personally, that you didn't know before, or like, man, I really need to remember this to be able to use once we start the research. All right? So that is it, and make sure you come to class prepared just with these notes. We're going to review them very quickly on Wednesday before we jump into the details of our actual research assignment. All right? Have a good afternoon.